All right, so you guys know how we love training plans, and we talk all the time here on the podcast about how following a personalized training plan is the best, it's the most effective, and it's the most enjoyable way for you to achieve your running goal. It's the greatest way for you to achieve success. It's the greatest way for you to achieve any difficult goal that you are chasing. You have to train in a way that's right for you. However,
It's the real life runners.
it's real life runners, right? And we like to keep it real for you guys no matter what. So, despite our best laid plans, sometimes life gets in the way and we have to adjust. We're forced to adjust. Sometimes we miss a day, right? And so, today we really want to talk about adjusting a plan and how to try to fit it all in. And then also how sometimes trying to fit it in is actually not what you want to do.
Right. And this was spurred by some recent coaching calls that we've
Yeah.
had that we have with our teams on the team coaching calls. People have plans, they're working the plans, they're like, all right, but this is coming up.
Right.
So what do I do?
Well, and sometimes it's like very last minute, right?
Yes.
Like, and so it's like, oh shoot, like all of a sudden this work trip popped up on my calendar. It was not planned. What am I supposed to do? I'm leaving on Thursday. And so like, some people will try to like shove all of their workouts into the beginning of the week before they leave on the workout. But is that the most optimal way to do it?
I mean, this has happened with multiple people. This has happened with us, literally, where it's like, okay, well, I'm going to be out of town on Friday, Saturday, Sunday. One of those is going to be a long run for me. So I'm going to put my long run onto like a Wednesday, but normally I have a speed session on Tuesday and maybe also on Thursday. So should I really do speed, then a long run, then another speed session? Because then I'm going to get 3 days off. And that's why I call it the Herculean effort. Is it's like, yes, I managed to fit everything in. I'm broken by the time we get to vacation. Like I need the vacation because I overdid it for the last 3 days, but you feel real accomplished with it.
Yes and no. And I think that that's really like, I'm so glad that we're tackling this topic on the podcast because I really think this is going to be one that you guys are going to want to save. And if you appreciate all the stuff we're teaching you today, share it with your friends. Okay. And if you haven't yet, go leave us a review on iTunes. I'm just going to throw that back in there. But I really think this is a super important topic that is going to be one of these episodes that you can come back to. So there are ways that you can like save your favorite episodes on your podcast player. I'm guessing you're going to want to save this one because
it's a bold statement. Well, save it right now.
I know, especially since we are like, not even into the meat of it yet. But it's one of those things that I think that all of us will face at some point in time. It's like, okay, what do we do? What is the best way? Because I think, like you said, if you listen to our podcast, hopefully you're either on board or almost getting on board with the idea that you need to be following a training plan if you want to make improvements. If you like just going out and running just for fun and for joy and because you love running, fantastic. You do not need to follow a training plan. And I'll even go as far to say it's like you don't even need to follow a training plan all year long, right? Like even if you want to improve, having those breaks in your training is a good thing for short periods of time. But once you kind of get on board with this idea of like, yes, I need a personalized plan because I want to improve, I want to achieve these goals that I'm setting for myself. What happens a lot of times is that we can become slaves to our training plan, right? And this is the mistake that we see so many people making is we think that just because we have a plan and we have a calendar, now we have like, okay, this goes on this day and this goes on this day. We've got to check every box. And if we're being real with ourselves, we like checking boxes, right? We're runners. I feel like that's a very common personality trait. Like, right? Like raise your hand right now if you're a box checker, because my hand's in the air for sure.
You love checking boxes.
I do. I actually write things down on my to-do list after I do them just so that I can check the box. That's how satisfying it is.
I have never done that. But okay, so that's our first bold statement is trying to cram your entire week's worth of workouts into 3 days is actually not quality training.
Right.
It seems like it is because it looks good on paper. Like
especially back-to-back days.
Yeah. Like, and your Strava is going to light up and be like, man, that is quality training. Your watch may tell you unproductive by the end of it though, but it looks overreaching, the classic overreaching. It looks good. So this happens sometimes if you got like work got in the way at the beginning of the week and you weren't able to run on like Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Now suddenly all of your runs got shoved into the back of the week. So everything's crammed together. Or if you plan ahead and
Mhm.
you're like, okay, well, I'm going to be out of town on the weekend and I've got stuff going, or I'm not going to run on this vacation or
Right.
whatever it is. So now do you cram everything into the front of the week? And
Mhm.
I would suggest that neither is a great option because it leads to all sorts of issues. Big ones right off the bat, overtraining.
Mhm.
Even if you don't change your weekly mileage.
Yeah.
If you have 4 days spread out over the week, Monday and then Wednesday, Thursday, and then Saturday long run.
Mhm.
If you take those 4 days and now you put them in 4 straight days, it's not that your mileage changed, but your
Right.
mileage density changed drastically.
Right, your mileage density, and then obviously the lack of recovery in between sessions.
Mhm.
That is really the biggest thing that changes if you're trying to kind of squeeze everything in, right? Especially like what you were mentioning before. If you've got two speed workouts during the week and a long run, and you're kind of trying to cram everything either in the front of the week or the back of the week, that is definitely going to lead to like speed and long run back to back or two speed sessions back to back. And that is just not the best way for your body to train because, like we've talked about before, your body gets broken down in your workouts, right? When you're doing hard speed workouts, when you're doing long runs, your body is breaking down. And it is in the recovery and rest following those harder efforts that your body builds back stronger, that your body makes the adaptations of training based on the load that you're placing on it, right?
Mhm.
So if you're stacking hard workouts back to back and you're not giving your body that time to recover, you're not actually reaping the benefits of those hard workouts. And that's just going to make you tired and more painful and more prone to injury and overtraining.
Right. And then another one that I'd like to add on to this is goes back to a thing we say all the time here. Stress is stress.
Yes.
So if you had a bunch of stuff going at work at the beginning of the week that you had to push your runs back,
Mm-hmm.
now suddenly you're piling up all of your
Mm-hmm.
runs and you're coming off of what may have been a very mentally stressful front half of the week.
Right.
So you're putting physical stress on top of mental stress. Stress plus stress equals broken.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's an equation, the growth equation is a podcast I enjoy, and their
Mm-hmm.
equation is stress plus rest equals growth. That's the equation.
Yep.
But stress plus stress just equals broken.
Yeah. And tired, right? Like just
Oh,
exhaustion.
just so tired.
Like both physically and mentally, right? Like, and this is what you have to remember is that a lot of times we think that running is a release. And for a lot of us, it is, right?
Yeah.
It can be. And if you have a lot of mental stress or emotional stress, especially like in the beginning of the week, and you're like, oh, I cannot wait to go for my runs. But then you've got a speed workout on the work on your plan and a long run on your plan. And that's just exhausting you even further. Like Kevin said, stress is still stress. And sometimes, even though we think that running is a stress reliever, it is still a physical stress on the body, right? Even easy runs are a physical stress on the body. They're not as stressful as your speed workouts and your long runs, but they're still a stress on the body. And do they provide mental relief? Yes. A lot of times they can provide a lot of mental stress relief. So again, you're kind of weighing the benefits there, like the risk versus the reward. Is the mental relief, the mental stress relief that you gain from getting that run in more important than the rest that your body physically might need?
Right. So then a lot of that comes into account of how soon is the race? Like, do I have a race in mind that I'm aiming
Yeah, like
towards?
what are you training for right now?
Because that changes the risk reward calculus.
For
Like,
sure.
do I really need to try and squeeze in this workout?
Mm-hmm.
Or would it be better for me to just not even have a speed workout this
Mm-hmm.
week? Maybe I just go easy runs this week. It's going to be fine.
Yep.
And then I can just continue moving along.
Mm-hmm.
It's also, if this is a thing that comes up every once in a while,
Right.
it's going to be okay if you have what really looks like an overloaded, super dense training week, and then you get back into your normal thing. That's another thing that we should really highlight here is if this is a random, occasional thing that comes up, you're probably fine. And like that's a great takeaway is it's going to be all right that you crammed everything at the front of the week. But if week after week after week, you're always cramming everything in on Wednesday through Sunday, and then by Monday you're spent, you're a grump at work, you're probably not productive at work on Monday. So then that builds to a stress of trying to get more working on Tuesday, Wednesday. You hit Thursday again, you're like, oh God, I got to hit my speed workout again. It's a vicious cycle that you're in.
It is. And I somewhat agree with you there because I think that you're right. Like if it happens once in a while, you're probably going to be okay. But I will say you still have to be cautious, especially if you're a new runner, right? Especially if
Ooh,
you're
good point.
a
New
new
runner.
runner, especially if you're like new to speed work, if you're new to strength training, if you're new to all of this stuff, and you're still trying to cram it all in, that's a lot of newness on your body, right? Like there's a lot of
It's too much new.
right. And so new is great because when we introduce new stimuli to our body makes adaptations. But if we introduce too many new stimuli to the body at once, our body kind of freaks out on us and is like not sure what to do if we don't give it the proper recovery. Okay. Again, so all the new stuff is fine. Like maybe you're new to running and you've never followed a training plan and you've joined our academy and you've got this personalized plan that's right for you and you're like ready to go and you've got your goals and you're all set to go, right? But now you also have the newness of also trying to fit all of this into a very short amount of time because of the other stress in your life, right? That's just too much new that you've stacked all on top of each other.
Yeah. I mean, you point out one of the little extra dangers in there of newness is when you get a new stimulus, it
Mm-hmm.
often leads to short-term benefits. So it's
Yes.
possible that you could have this week where you cram everything in, and the next week you're feeling amazing.
Yeah.
And you're like, well, clearly that's how I should train. I should
No.
always crit. No, you should not.
Don't do it.
That it's a very dangerous game to play.
Right.
Even if you're super experienced as a
Mm-hmm.
runner, and you're like, okay, well, I've been always fitting my workouts into the front. I basically run 4 days and then I take 3 days off. That's just always how I've done it. It's possible that you've just adapted to this and you're not maximizing your potential
Right.
because you're not getting the recovery during the 4 days.
Mm-hmm.
And then you're not building up like enough volume because you're only able to fit it into those 4 days instead of
Mm-hmm.
being able to stretch things out. I feel like you're just not maximizing full potential at that point.
Right. So then you kind of have to be honest with yourself and say, is there a way for me to change my schedule up a little bit? Right. Because again, what you have to remember, and this is so key, and this is why we're going to say it. If you listen to our podcast, you're going to hear us say this on many, many episodes, if not all, right? The body absorbs training through recovery, right? There needs to be this pattern of stress the body and then recover, and stress the body and recover, because it is in stressing the body that we break ourselves down, and it is in the recovery that we build ourselves back up stronger. And this pattern is very individual, and it's based on so many different factors. It's based on your body type, it's based on your running experience, it's based on your past injury history, it's based on, you know, maybe if you have any sort of chronic conditions that you're dealing with. There's so many different factors that go into this. And so there are some people out there, like if you're looking at your running buddy that's doing all of this and you're like, well, they're getting great results, that doesn't mean it's right for you, because you might have, well, you do have a very different body and a very different life than everyone else on the planet,
Yeah.
right? And so someone else might be able to train, 3, 4 days in a row and take a couple of days off and be totally fine. Whereas you, like, I know that we've had a lot of different clients throughout the years that if they run, like, we've had them come to us and say, I've been doing this, I've been running for 10 years now, and I know that I don't like running on back to back days.
Mhm.
Right. My body just doesn't respond well to it. And of course, as coaches, we always like to challenge those and ask more questions and say, okay, well, what is it, that's causing that problem? Is it just some soreness? Because there are for sure benefits on training on back to back days. But again, every person kind of has a different story, a different body, what works better for them. So that pattern of running harder workouts and then recovery is different for every individual.
Yeah, and what recovery means for one individual and the next is
Yes,
totally different.
also very
Like
true.
recovery for one person may be a 30-minute walk.
Mm-hmm.
Recovery for like Kipchoge is a 10-mile run at 7-minute pace.
Exactly.
Like this, they're
Right.
with very different human beings.
Yes, indeed, indeed. But we have to remember that most of our training, especially for long races, needs to be easy training, easy running. Okay, we talk a lot about the 80-20 principle here, that 80% of your running needs to be at an easy effort level, 20% needs to be harder, right? Because again, easy runs help your body to recover and prepare for the next harder effort. But like Kevin said, Kipchoge's recovery is much different than mine and even yours.
Or or a new runner
Or a
versus
new runner,
experienced
correct.
runner, or sometimes the experienced runner then becomes a little bit more of a mature runner and they need
Mhm.
extra recovery. Maybe the new
And
runner,
by mature, we mean older.
yes, I do.
And because we're all getting older, and that's totally okay.
I'm racing as a masters this winter. It's
Ooh.
so it's all fine. But yeah, an easy recovery day could go all the way from not running at all into an hour and a half run. It all just depends on what that person is currently working with
And what they're capable
and
of,
what they're fully capable of.
right?
Yeah.
Like, and what they are also what they're training for, right? Like
Yeah,
someone
what
that's
your goals
training,
are.
yeah, like someone that's training for a 5K is going to have a different looking recovery than someone that's training for an ultra marathon,
Yes. I
right?
mean, their overall volume is completely different.
Exactly, right? And those are all things that you have to take into account. Again, one more reason why that personalized plan is what's best for you. So if you have this plan, right? If you have, whether it's a generic plan or a personalized plan, if you're trying to kind of stuff one end of the week with all of your workouts, it creates this overload in the body, right? It's like you're building up, you're building something up and your body's not able to kind of dissipate it, right? Like,
Yes.
so I think about this kind of like with heat, right?
Okay.
Like if you're in a really hot environment, like your body sweats to help cool itself down, its core temperature. But there are sometimes if you're just in that hot environment for a really long time, your body can't sweat enough, or especially if it's very humid out, right? You
Yep.
can't sweat enough to actually dissipate all of that heat and deal with that load on the body. So other things happen. Like unfortunately, like it can lead to heat exhaustion and heat stroke and heat, severe heat illness. The body
Yep.
just passes out,
Okay,
right?
so essentially the heat equivalent of not being able to recover from it.
Mm-hmm.
All right, I'm going with a baking equivalent here.
Baking, let's do
Yeah.
it.
All right. So you make the cake. So I have a birthday in July. So you make the cake, it comes
Mm-hmm.
out of the oven.
Yeah,
Try to immediately frost it. Like right then.
I've
Like
tried that
as it
before. It
comes
does
out.
not go
No,
well.
no, you try and immediately frost it before you allow the cake to actually cool down
Yeah.
and quote unquote recover so
Mm-hmm.
that it can come down to an appropriate temperature. If you frost it too quick, you have a puddle of frosting that has melted right off the outside of the cake.
Mm-hmm.
So this is my suggestion is sure, you're going to stress it by, putting the cake in the oven. Then you got to let it recover before you can do anything else to it. It just literally has to sit there, cool
Okay.
itself back down.
All right. And since Thanksgiving's coming up,
Sure.
we could also look at a turkey,
Okay.
right? Like when you take a turkey out of the oven, you have to let it rest first, right? To let all of the
All of the
juices
juices.
reabsorb. And if you carve it too soon, it's just like juiced everywhere on the cutting board.
So the Food Network has told me it has to reabsorb the juices, as to
Reabsorb.
balance the juices, which I think is very much related to sweating. I think
Okay.
so.
So how is this related to running again? Let's
It's
go
not.
back.
It's not. This is a food podcast. Fine.
But so we're going back to that overload, right? Of like trying to do something without the proper recovery. Doing too much without the proper recovery is not the best for the body, right? And like you said, you're not going to be maximizing your potential. It's probably okay on occasion, but overall it's not a sustainable way to train.
Excellent. All right. So I think that covers like our first big idea here is trying to fit everything into just a few days.
Mhm.
It's not quality training and it's going to lead to exhaustion and possible injury. Second idea, just always fitting more workouts in or longer workouts is not always the key to success. Even if you're not trying to cram things into like the front of the week, the end of the week, just doing more workouts, longer workouts, bigger workouts is not necessarily the recipe for success. And this sometimes happens when people are trying to fit things in too much.
Mhm.
They're like, all right, well, normally I run 5 days out of the week, but I only have 3 days to do. So I'm just going to put everything into these 3 days.
Mhm.
So like I can fit in 3 runs instead of 4. Well, great. So my 2 easy runs are just going to become 1 long run. plus I have my long run. Well, no, now you have two long runs during the week. That's a
Right.
whole heck of a lot more stress
Yeah.
than two easy runs.
Right. Like if you have like an easy 3 miles on the schedule and another easy 3 miles, that is not the same thing as one 6 miler.
It's definitely not the
Yeah.
same
Well,
thing.
and that kind of goes with training load as well, of like kind of getting into like ratios of like how much of your weekly mileage should your long one run be percentage wise, right? Like, because there are some people that say, oh, well, your long run should never be more than 50%. It should never be more than 30%. It should never be more than X amount of your total weekly mileage,
I
right?
think most of those numbers are made up. I'm sure we could find some research, but
Right.
there are various running coaches that would
Hmm.
all throw different numbers at you.
Correct.
The grump that I used to sell shoes with, he complained anytime somebody's long run crested 30% of their weekly mileage.
Hmm.
I'm like, how many miles do you think people should do to
Yeah.
train for a marathon? He also thought it was ridiculous that anybody could train for a marathon less than like 80 miles a week.
And also probably less than 6 or 7 days of running,
Of course.
right? Like,
Why
so
would you not do 7 days of running?
because that was old school,
Of
right?
course,
Like,
he couldn't sit up out of his chair without
uh-huh.
his knees like waking up people next door. But
Exactly, exactly. And like we have a friend too that like trained for the Olympic trials back in the 80s. And she's like, man, what you guys know now is so much better than what we knew then. Like we didn't understand the concept of easy running. We just went out and did all of our runs at like a medium to moderate effort level. That's
yep.
just what we did, right? And she is no longer able to run, unfortunately. She walks a lot, but she's got major breakdown and arthritis in her knees, right? And this is one of those things that lead to that myth of running is bad for your knees. It's not. It's bad for your knees if you do it improperly, right? if
Yeah.
you're if you're increasing your training load and not allowing this recovery, yes, then your joints are going to break down, your muscles are going to break down, your body's going to break down. That's why recovery is so important. So if you do have to shorten, how many, I shouldn't say shorten, but like um decrease the number of days that you're running, it's may or may not be beneficial for you to try to combine days into each other. And so that is one example where it's not beneficial, right? Trying to combine two easy runs into one longer run just to make sure you're getting the mileage in might not be the best idea.
Or taking one of your easy runs and just adding it to your long run. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
well, I already have a long run. I'll just make it
Right.
a longer run. Okay, but if your long run was 6 last week,
Mm-hmm.
a moving from 6 miles to 7 miles seems reasonable.
Right.
From 10K to 12K, reasonable. From 6 miles to 10 miles is a pretty big jump,
Mm-hmm.
especially if the 6 was literally the longest you've run.
Yeah.
From 6 to 10 is then ridiculous.
Mm-hmm.
I have gone from 6 to 10, but I've also run much further than 10 miles. So
Right.
to me, that's not that crazy of a jump. But if your 6 is your longest run, don't be like, well, it was going to be a 7 miler, but I
Mm-hmm.
skipped my 3 mile easy run early in the week. So I guess it has to be 10.
Right. I'll
It
just
doesn't,
tack it on.
it doesn't have to be anything.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one of the other things that shows up in this is so many runners that key on like, I have to do this.
Mm-hmm.
I have to get this total mileage for the week.
Yep.
I missed this run and this run. So, well, it's Saturday. I guess I have to go do 25 miles.
And yeah, which is not a good idea, right? And that's when we talk about becoming slaves to your training plan. These numbers are not absolute. Pause. These numbers are not absolute. Okay, yes, we're still here, but I put a pause in there for dramatic, the dramatic effect there. But it's true, right? Like making sure that you hit your weekly mileage exactly as it's written in the plan is probably not as important as you think it is. Okay. It is much more important that you are spacing your workouts out if possible, that you're getting this recovery time in between your workouts. And then, the other thing that people do, like they will try to maybe combine things,
Mhm.
but it's also like, well, if I can only fit in one workout, it's got to be a super intense
It's
one,
gonna be the
right? Like,
mother of all
yeah, like
workouts.
I was only supposed to do a 20-minute tempo run, but I should maybe do a 20-minute tempo run plus some quarter repeats at 5K pace, followed by,
Yes.
right? Followed by some 200s, right? And they just try to make the workout super intense and it's just exhausting, right? And so, again, if you are trying to fit mileage into less days, and that's going to lead you to ramp up your mileage on those days a lot more than you're used to, or if you're trying to fit in more speed work and make your speed workouts more intense because you're not getting that second workout in, this can lead to injury and this can lead to exhaustion. And when you're ramping up your mileage too quickly, or you're increasing your intensity for your overall mileage too quickly, it's just a recipe for disaster.
And it just takes the fun out of running.
Yeah.
Like it quite frankly, when you say slave to the plan, I don't think slave to the plan. And I'm like, yeah, I get to go be a slave to my plan.
Right.
Like no one's celebrating that. No one's
No.
stoked. They get to post that on their Instagram. Like, woo, slave to the plan today. Like that's not exciting.
That's
Like
not a hashtag that
that's
we see.
hashtag slave to the plan. I don't think
Yeah.
that it is. People
I'm going to
pretend
search it up and see if
like
anyone's ever used it.
people will put in like hashtag committed. No, you're not. You probably needed a rest day. That's
Yeah.
actually probably what you hashtag committed to the long term is a picture of you resting.
Is a picture of you
Like
resting.
that's actually
Yeah.
really what it is.
Yeah, because like when you go into it with this mentality of like, I have to fit it in, I have to make up the miles, I have to make up this run, then it becomes a burden, right? Like even just using that word have to, that's why I emphasized it so much there, right? I have to do this. It becomes a chore, right? That is going to start to suck the fun out of your running so quickly. If you are feeling unmotivated and you're feeling like, God, I really used to enjoy this. And now all of a sudden I'm following this plan and it's not fun anymore, right? There's a lot of people that we've talked to that have said that before. It's like, I used to love running and then I decided to train for this half marathon. And now it's just like tedious and monotonous. And there's this plan that I have to follow and it's just not fun anymore. Well, you're thinking about it in a way that's not benefiting you, right? Like when you think I have to do this, of course you're going to suck the fun out. It's like when I tell my kids that they have to go clean their room, automatically they're like, mom, do I have to? Why do I have to? Like, time to clean the bathroom. Why do I have to? Right. And I'm like, well, you don't. We could live in a filthy, disgusting household. That is an option. That's just an option that I don't like. And so that's not the one that we're going to go with here.
Right. Okay. So if we're trying to get around that, more and longer workouts are the key. Let's focus on a few things to get around that. One, that 80-20 that Angie mentioned earlier, lean into 80% of your week should be easy, 20% should be that medium or harder effort. That way you don't end up with too much intensity.
And again, this is just a guideline too.
Yeah, total
right?
guideline.
These are not hard and fast numbers. You don't have to be calculating it out and making, oh gosh, this I'm at 81.5%,
No.
right? Like this is a general guideline. Like as
ballpark.
long as you're around this area, you're probably fine.
80-20 is a good ballpark because it leans towards a whole lot of easy running.
Yeah.
And that's ultimately the key. Look, if you're training for something that's a half marathon, full marathon, things where you're going to be out there for 60 plus minutes, most basically all of that running is rooted in how strong is your cardio furnace, like how much cardio base have you built up.
Yeah.
And it's good to have some other systems going, it's good to work on some speed, but so much of that is who's the biggest cardio monster out there. And that's where the 80 comes in. Like you got to make sure that you have plenty of easy running. So let's say that you've got like a training plan that gives 2 speed sessions during the week. I know you like to have 2 speed sessions during the week on 4 days of running.
Yeah. Yeah, real quick before we jump into that, like
go.
I also thought you were mentioning who's the biggest cardio monster out there, right? But the other thing that easy running does is it allows you to stay out there for longer periods of time. So not only is it building up your cardio base, it's also building up your muscular endurance as well.
Yes.
Right? Like your legs like need to be able to continue to function for longer periods of time. Like your muscles just naturally start to fatigue. And when you're out there for longer periods of time, you start to build up more of that and you're not fatiguing the muscles as quickly. So you're automatically able to last longer.
Yeah. I mean, if you're going out for 30 minutes and one of them's 30 minutes hard and one of them's 30 minutes easy, one of them you could extend.
Yeah.
The other one you're probably done at the end of that guy. So to go back to my specific example here, you like to get in a couple of speed sessions on 4 days of running. Well, if you're going to miss a day, the day that you should miss is probably one of the speed days.
Right.
You're like, oh, but I already did my speed session and then I did an easy day. Now I've got like another speed or a long run. Which one should I get in? Skip the speed.
Yeah.
Like if you're not sure, In all likelihood, the answer is pull back from the speed
Mhm.
on that. Because if you're missing a whole day of running, that's going to reduce your overall volume. It's going to reduce your overall mileage. And so your 80/20, your percentages are getting thrown off.
Mhm.
So if the overall amount gets shrunk down and you continue to do all the speed that was planned,
Right.
in all likelihood, it's way more than your 20%.
Your ratios are off.
Your ratios are
Yeah,
off.
and I that's true. I do like that, but lately I have been leaning a lot more into the easy running, like because it just mentally also gives me a break. Like
Yeah.
it is I don't have to be like, oh, I have to like go out and like hit this like focused steady state effort, this tempo effort, or this speed session. I can be like, oh, it's just an easy run. Like I can go out and get an easy run in, right? Like, and I've been doing like some of my easy run days, I'll even do as like a run walk, and it just like takes the pressure right off, and it's such a like a nice thing to do.
I mean that's like I it didn't put that into my
Yeah.
outline, but that's an excellent add-on here is knowing that there's such like a mental release
Yeah.
of being able to have a comfortable, easy run.
Hmm.
Like we talked about the
And
difference,
that you can walk if you want to
which is
or need
completely
to.
fine.
Yeah.
Like especially if you're using your run as a stress reliever,
Hmm.
yes, it is still a physical stress, but an easy run, especially if you're going to put in a run walk into it and like fully embrace the ease of the easy
Yeah.
run, it can be a nice recovery thing.
Yeah.
There's a little bit of a physical stress to it, but overall that's a nice recovery aspect.
Yeah. And I think that like, some people really are against like the whole run walk thing or of walking really. Like they don't want to walk in their runs. And I would encourage you to like think about it and try to embrace it a little bit more. There's nothing wrong with taking walking breaks some of the times, right? It depends on again, depends on your goal,
Depends on the
right?
goal.
It depends on your goal and what you're trying to accomplish. But there are so many people that like their ego just prevents them from even thinking about walking, and they end up pushing too hard on those days that they're feeling exhausted. So you have to ask yourself, like, what's better here? If this is supposed to be an L2 easy run and I'm just feeling wiped out because of the physical and mental stress that I've been under this week, is it better for me to like push myself to run the whole time and not take a walking break, which is really going to put my run more in like the level 4
Yep.
arena, right? Versus actually listening to my body and taking a couple of walking breaks, right? You don't want to walk half your run, but like taking a couple walking breaks that are like a minute long just to give your body that run and that or that recovery within the run can really decrease the overall effort level of your run, make it a lot more enjoyable, and actually give you that L2 benefit.
Excellent. All right. Second point in here, really learn to trust your body and your mind. Like when you're getting ready to run and you're thinking about like, all right, this is what my plan says. It says that I'm supposed to go out and get a speed workout today. How am I actually feeling? And
Mm-hmm.
if you're feeling really, really tired, you're feeling stressed, you're feeling kind of like physically or mentally beat up, that might not be the day to go knock out a hard workout.
Yeah.
Maybe that's the day where you're like, you know what? I really am exhausted. I don't know if it's
Mhm.
worthwhile to try and push through this thing. So I'm going to go for an easy run. On the other hand, if your brain is telling you every single day, nah, you're tired. You
I
should
don't want to do that.
rest day.
Yeah.
Oh, you're tight. You're too tired to do this. Easy day.
Mhm.
This is going to be exhausting. Easy day.
Right.
Sometimes you have to overcome it and be like, all
Sometimes
right,
you do.
that's just my brain telling me this is going to be difficult.
Yep.
And then you got to do it anyway. But sometimes, like, this is why you got to like know the voices in your head.
Mhm.
Is that your body sending you a good message that
Mhm.
like no, this is going to be too much, or is your body just trying to protect you because it knows a workout's going to be hard?
Yeah, and like sometimes what I'll do is I will kind of test myself,
Okay.
right? So I'll say, okay, we're just going to go out and we're going to start off easy. And if I have like a workout on the schedule, I'm going to say, I'm going to do the first repetition of it, right? Or the first round of it. Because a lot of times my harder days are interval type of
Yep.
workouts, right? Where I'm either getting into a medium pace or even a harder pace. And I'm like, okay, I'm just going to do a round or a couple of rounds and see how I feel. And if I'm still feeling exhausted, I'm going to cut this workout short.
That's a good way of going at it.
Yeah.
I think one of the other things here is leaning into effort pace, like
Mhm.
effort based runs,
Yeah.
instead of finding specific paces that you have to hit. Where at the end of the workout, you could look back at it and be like, I didn't do that workout correctly. I didn't succeed at the workout because I didn't hit the goal pace on the magic plan.
Yeah.
Like there's no magic plan that's going to have the magic workout inside of it. leaning into effort-based runs. Did you push kind of hard? Did you push moderately hard? Was it medium hard? Like, did you find the effort you were supposed to go at
Mhm.
and not worry as much about what the pace is? If you got a whole lot of other stuff going on in your life, your paces might not be off, but your effort levels will still feel the same.
Mhm.
Like a 10-minute mile and a 9-minute mile may feel the same depending
Mhm.
on how much sleep you got the night before, what's
Yep.
going on at work, like what's going on in the lives of your kids. Like these could feel exactly the same, even though they're
Mhm.
completely different paces.
Yeah, and there are so many people that get locked into like, well, so for my effort level, what pace is that?
Yes.
Right?
Oh,
Like,
that's a great question. I
right, like
love
it's
that
like,
one.
okay, so what pace should I be running my L5 at? What pace should I be running my L7 at? Right? Like, because we want the numbers. Our brain loves numbers. We as runners love numbers. We want to make sure that we're doing it quote unquote right. And like Kevin said, this is about learning how to trust your body and your mind. And that if that freaks you out, that might be something that you need to actually start to work on a little bit here, right? Like understanding and being honest with yourself, right? Because I was having this conversation with somebody and I was like, well, we teach our runners about effort level training. And he's like, oh, well, that can get a little tricky. And I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, because like there are some days like you don't want to push yourself. And I'm like, yeah, straight
Yes,
up.
there are.
And so if you have like, okay, here's the pace I have to hit, in your mind, it can be easier because it's very concrete
Mhm.
versus, okay, I have to go out and I have to hit an L7 or an L8. Are you just lying to yourself because you want the easy route? And you're like, yeah, this is an L7 when it's actually maybe an L6
Yeah.
or an L5,
L5.
right? Like, and that's when you have to kind of dig in and say, all right, this is a goal that I have. I want to get faster. That's going to require me to actually be honest with myself and put this effort in, even if I don't have the exact pace, and understand you can't get this wrong either, right? Like there are some people that think that you can get it wrong, but the more you do it, the more you practice, the more honest you are with yourself, the better you will become at assessing these effort levels. So whether or not you want to actually push yourself to that effort level, that's on you, right? You get to choose whether or not you're going to push yourself to those effort levels on any given day.
Yeah, effort level training just has so many benefits.
Yeah.
You go to a different temperature, you go to a different altitude, you go to a race environment,
Mm-hmm.
you can still lean in on your effort levels to
Mm-hmm.
help guide you
Yeah.
a whole lot more than you might be able to like look at a watch. Like we could not be more sea level if we tried. Could you like a trip to Colorado and try and go out for a run and
Yeah.
be like, oh no, my L5 is this many minutes per mile. No, it's not.
No.
No, there's no oxygen. Like
No,
none. There's
like
absolutely there's actually none.
the typical elevation gain that I get on our like 5 mile loop around our house is
13
13
feet.
feet.
13 feet every time.
13 feet. That's what it is.
And there's never a hill. My watch just at one point in time,
Yeah.
it thinks that I just dropped into a hole 13
Mhm.
feet down, ran there for about a mile and a half, and then I leapt right back out of the
Yeah.
hole.
I think on A1A it's 26 feet because there
Perfect.
are a couple little
There's a little
hills that
like,
you have to kind of go
uh-huh.
over. But yeah, so always
But
fun.
13
But yeah,
feet.
effort level training is fantastic. And if you aren't practicing it yet, we highly suggest that you start to practice it. And there's tons of past episodes that we have all about effort levels. So you can go back in our archive and just search for effort levels, and you're going to find a ton of good resources for you.
All right. Another point that I want to cover here. Sometimes you just need to go short. Hey, people are like, all right, well, my schedule says that I'm
Mhm.
supposed to have an easy run of an hour. Maybe
Yeah.
you're building up for like a half, like a longer race.
Mhm.
So it says, all right, easy run of an hour, but I can't fit an easy run of an hour later in the week because I have this, that, and the other thing. So I have to do it early in the week if I'm going for 60
Mhm.
minutes. No, you don't. If earlier in the week you normally have an off day or you have that
Mhm.
day that's just like a strength only day,
Yeah.
instead of trying to cram in your 60-minute run and strength, which might be too much if you're not used to putting strength and a run on the same day,
Mhm.
you could just actually choose to go for 30 minutes later in the week.
Mhm.
Just not have your 6-minute run. And people
Yeah.
are like, but that's completely going to change my schedule. Yeah, it's going to change it a little bit, but
Right.
it's going to keep your schedule roughly the same. And there's a
Mm.
benefit to that consistent
Yeah.
schedule week upon week upon week. You're stacking bricks. You're not trying to put down enormous bricks. You're putting a consistent,
Mhm.
normal sized brick week upon week upon week upon week.
Right. And if it happens every now and then, again, not a big deal, right? If it's happening consistently, then then you have to ask yourself, is this the right plan for me? Right?
Mhm.
Like if I'm finding that I need to adjust my training plan every single week, this might not be the right plan for me. This might not be the right layout for me. Because, like Kevin said, maybe you can't get in that 60-minute run. And so you can only get in 30. And then you're noticing that's kind of happening on a consistent basis. Fine. That doesn't mean that you aren't going to achieve your goal. It might just mean that you need to adjust your timeline,
Yeah,
right?
good
Like
call.
it just might mean that it's going to take you a little bit longer to achieve that goal. If you're like building up to a half marathon, right? If right now in your life you are so busy with work and kids and other responsibilities, maybe a half marathon is not the right choice for you right now. Like you really want to do it, you've got this bucket list item, but again, running needs to fit into your real life, right? And if you don't have the time to dedicate to that running goal right now, that's totally okay. That doesn't mean that you're not going to be able to do that 6 months down the road or a year down the road. It just might not be right now. And I think that this is a hard thing for a lot of us to accept, right? That like I can't do it all at the same time. I am a firm believer that we can do all of it. We can do everything that we want to do. We can accomplish anything we want. We might not be able to do it all at the exact same time. Like there are seasons in our life where, maybe you have young children at home. And so you need to focus on your kids and you don't have as much time to run. But that time that you can carve out, that's important for you to take for yourself, right? Versus trying to like cram everything in and like make it all work. And that just adds a lot of mental stress to you as well, just trying to figure out how to cram all the stuff in.
Yeah, I mean that will be a good title for the episode. Also, is it gets a little long and wordy. You can do everything, you just can't do everything at the exact same time.
Mm-hmm.
But that's essentially plan adjustments. Is
Yeah.
people take the entire week of training and they're like, I'm going to do it all on Monday.
Yeah.
Like
Don't do it.
you can do all the things. It just gets a little tough to try and do them all in the same day. So maybe your 90-day plan, it just takes a longer
Maybe
timeline.
you need 120
Right.
days,
Your 90-day
right?
plan stretches out to an
Yeah.
extra month long, which is
Mm-hmm.
tricky if you have like a specific race at the end of it. But then maybe the time goal for that specific race gets pushed down the road.
Right.
You can still run that race. You can still be physically prepared. It might not be the best, like optimized use of that plan.
Mm-hmm.
But look, running is not going to be like, all right, I ran that race. I did it. I finished running. Like you're not checking that box off and now you don't have to ever run again. I think most of the listeners to the podcast are like, all right, I'd like to do a race and be successful at it, as successful as I can be at that race.
Yeah.
And then they're probably going to sign up for another race.
Yeah. And I think that the other thing that we have to keep in mind, because when you were talking, you were mentioning if you're already signed up for that specific race, right?
Mhm.
This is something that I think so many people get locked into and they're like, well, I've already signed up. Like I've already paid the fee. And it's like, okay, so maybe it's like $100, right? That's about an average cost. Like
Sure.
there's some that are a little bit less expensive. There's definitely some that are more expensive. But like, let's say it's $100 and you're like, well, I don't want to like waste it. I've already paid it, right? I want to run the race. But if you're not physically ready to actually do that race, is it worth potentially hurting yourself and not being able to run for a couple months and having to go see a doctor or a physical therapist? Like, is that worth $100 to you? Right. And there are some people that are like, well, it's an out of town race. And so I've got flights and I've got hotels. Yeah, it's true. Right. Like sometimes the cost is a lot greater, but I want you to ask yourself, like, if you ask yourself, am I truly prepared for this race and ready to run? Do I think that I'm well prepared? And if you can honestly say, nope, I really don't think so. Like
Mhm.
maybe you even have a coach that you're working with and your coach is like, like this timeline, like I really wish you had another month. I really wish you had another 2 months here. Is it worth you doing that race and potentially hurting yourself that could cause further, damage and downtime and even more money out of your pocket when
That's
you
the
have
thing. If
to
you
go?
start adding medical
Yeah.
expenses, those are going to add up just
Right.
as much.
So maybe it would be best for you when you're looking at the long-term goals and the big picture to not do that race at all or to change your goal for that race.
Mhm.
Like we've got one of our athletes that we're coaching, she was supposed to do Chicago and some things kind of happened during her training. She had to take a little bit of time off for an injury that she experienced. And so she decided that she was still in good enough shape to run Chicago. She just was going to do a run walk instead. She was going to adjust her goal instead of, trying to go for the BQ, which was the original goal.
Mhm.
She's like, okay, I'm still going to run it, but I'm going to adjust my goal. I don't care about the time. I'm just going to go and I'm going to enjoy
I'm
the
going to
crowd.
experience the Chicago
I'm going to
Marathon.
experience the Chicago Marathon. It's going to be a different experience,
Mhm.
but I'm going to go and love the crowd and I'm going to, hang out with my friends. And like it became a different thing, right? So feel free to adjust your goals, your expectations, what you want to get out of that race in order to support your long term goals and your long term health.
Excellent. All right. I have a couple other tips on essentially, and I guess they're tips, suggestions on how to avoid trying to um, put in too many workouts or too much mileage and hope that that's somehow going to fix things. Sometimes the opposite works. Okay. Maybe you have too much stuff going on in your life to fit in all of the speed workouts during the week. So you're like, all right, I could go out and run, but I don't think that I can push myself to like a hard level once out of the week, definitely not two workouts out of the week. You could just blow off the speed sessions. And some people are like, oh, great, sign me up. I will blow off all the speed sessions. Great.
I'm looking at you, Becky.
I enjoyed that 30 seconds of the podcast where he said, blow off all of the speed sessions. Blow off the speed sessions and add strides a couple times during the week.
Yeah.
Like you could fill in and be like, all right, these few weeks of my life are super, super busy between work and kids and a vacation and a trip and all the things. These few weeks are going to be super busy. You don't need to fit in all of the workouts during that time. You could put in strides a couple times during the week. Maybe instead of 15-second strides, you make them 30-second strides and just highlight a little bit of speed so that when your life kind of balances back out a little bit, you're able to focus a little bit more, you have the effort and energy to get in the workout, your speed isn't gone. Your speed will hang around for a while through doing nothing more than a handful of strides a couple of times a week.
Yeah.
It really will hang along. It's not going to build much.
No.
But you can hang on to it for quite a while. Same thing with a long run. Like your long run endurance will last for like 2 or 3 weeks before it really starts tapering off.
Right. And so again, this is not a long-term fix. Like you can't just blow off all of your speed sessions and add some strides and think you're going to get faster.
Does not work.
And that's not what we're talking about here.
But if you've been training, you can throw some strides in for a week, maybe 2 weeks. Instead of doing the speed sessions, you can do some strides in. It will prevent detraining.
Yeah. Yeah. And then finally, the last kind of thing we want to offer to you guys is sometimes it's better for you to cut back on your mileage in order to add strength into your plan. Okay. And this is something we just covered on our coaching call with one of our athletes this week. His schedule is really, really busy right now. And he's like, I'm having a hard time. I'm going to be 100% honest with you guys. I'm skipping some of the strength sessions. I'm skipping some of the core sessions. And I'm like, I don't want you doing that. And if you need to if you've got a really busy week, I would rather you take a mile or 10 minutes off of your easy run so that you fit in even just one round of our strength sessions. That's going to be much better for you than just trying to get in that extra 10 minutes of running, right? So sometimes if you need to fit running and strength into the same day, shrink the length of your run, make sure you get in some strength training, and that's going to set you up better for that long-term success. And the other thing you have to keep in mind is that you don't have to do a 45-minute strength session for it to be effective. Like I said, if you can just fit in 10 to 15 minutes, especially if you've got a busy schedule, that is enough to at least maintain. And for some people, especially if strength training is a new thing for you, you can actually start building strength in as little as 10 to 20 minutes per strength session, a couple of times a week, 2 to 3 times a week. That is beneficial for you. Like there are some people that have this like all or nothing mentality. And they're like, well, if it's not at the gym and if I'm not lifting heavy and if it's not 45 minutes, it's not worth my time. That is not true.
Yeah. The all or nothing mentality, it's kind of a thread that's run throughout this entire podcast is don't worry about having to fit everything in, making sure that like I've got my strength and then I did that workout and I added the workout to my long run and then I'm going to wrap it up with the strength because I haven't made my strength in this week. No, you aren't. You're going to be broken by the time Monday comes around. So it's okay to pull back on something. You're like, all right, I'd like to fit everything in. Something's going to have to be reduced so that maybe if you're not used to a run and a strength in the same day, pull back on how much strength it is, pull back on the length of the
Mhm.
run so that you can put them into the same day. You don't have to combo both of
Right.
them and be like, I did it. I fit everything in. Maybe it worked for that week, but week upon week upon week, it might not actually be sustainable.
Exactly. So understanding how to create a personalized plan is essential, and understanding how to adjust this plan is even more important because real life is going to get in the way, right? I shouldn't say more important, but it is also equally as important, because even if we have the best laid personalized plan, things are going to happen, right? So it's like, what do I do along the way?
Yes. What do I do now?
Yeah. And so if you guys are looking for any help with this, we do provide coaching. You can head over to realliferunners.com and you can get some of our free resources over there. You can get on our waiting list for our coaching program over there. We've got some great info. And the cool thing is, I have just created a brand new resource for you, because one of the biggest mistakes that we see people making is not knowing where they are in their running right now, and then jumping into a training plan or setting a timeline or setting goals that are, I should say, setting goals with the wrong timeline, because
Yep.
they don't have an accurate assessment of where they are right now. So I created what I like to call your running snapshot, which is a 1 page PDF that you can go through and just fill out to really get a great idea about where you are right now. Like what your running looks like, what your strength looks like. So if you want that, head over to realliferunners.com/snapshot and grab your free copy of the running snapshot today. And it's a really cool thing because you can fill it out today and you can fill it out in 3 months and kind of use it as a progress tracker as well,
Yeah.
to kind of check and see where you are.
It's a great resource you
Yeah.
created there.
Yeah. So head over to realliferunners.com/snapshot to grab that free resource today. And again, if you haven't left us a review on iTunes yet, please, we would love it. And we would appreciate it so much if you were to do that, so that we could help more runners to enjoy their running and train in a way that's right for them. Feel free to share with your friends all the good things to help us grow this podcast. And as always, thank you so much for spending this time with us. This has been the Real Life Runners Podcast, episode number 276. Now get out there and run your life.